You're on.
You're on.
Good evening. It's November 18th, 2014, and we're here for our regularly scheduled Brattleboro Select Board meeting. We know that the meeting was officially warned because the meeting was called to order at 5:35, and we went into executive session to discuss a series of matters in executive session. So the first item on the agenda is approving the minutes from November 4th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from November 4th?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve the minutes from November 4th. Is there any comments, suggestions, changes to those minutes from anybody on the board? Anybody who's in attendance? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes from November 4 as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. The next matter on the agenda is chair's remarks. I have a number of small matters that I'll speak to. Well, not really small matters, actually. Each one will be relatively short. First, we received last week notice of a number of reports that had been issued by and about Vermont Yankees decommissioning, including the shutdown decommissioning activities report and the post-shutdown decommissioning activities report and the Vermont Yankees site assessment study. And the release of those reports included the opportunity for the town to comment. I think it's fair to say that the town of Brattleboro does have significant interest in issues relating to Vermont Yankee and its decommissioning. One of the matters that received the most press coverage is that there's at least been a suggestion that emergency response money should be coming out of the decommissioning fund going forward. And I think it's fair to say that I and probably other members of the Select Board feel pretty strongly that the decommissioning fund should remain whole and should continue to accrue without being tapped into for other necessary funding for emergency response, for which Entergy should be responsible. We are going to ask the planning director to prepare comments on these two reports to be ready by Friday so that the Select Board can consider them at the beginning of our budget meeting on Monday. And it'll be our intention, hopefully, to endorse comments for submission to the Department of Public Safety.
Service.
The Department of Public Service. We'll also note that Kate O'Connor is on the
Yeah, it's called Vermont Nuclear Decommissioning Citizens Panel.
On the Vermont Yankee Decommissioning Citizens Panel. And so we'll also be looking to Kate and her expertise and her involvement in that matter to help represent our interests and the town's interests in that matter going forward. Second, I would note that after some scheduling difficulties, we have set two budget meetings to begin at 5 o'clock on next Monday and next Tuesday, the 24th and the 25th of November. And those meetings are scheduled for 5 to 8 next Monday and Tuesday. The development of the fiscal year 16 budget is the most focused time when we make spending and policy decisions on behalf of the town. And we will be hearing at those meetings on the 24th and into the 25th from department heads about their budget requests and their comments about various budget-related issues. And we will be discussing funding levels for fiscal year 2016. We have asked the interim town manager to come to us with at least some potential areas where we could make cuts and where we could consider those matters, and The Select Board is looking forward to having all that information in hand by this coming Friday, so we can study it over the weekend, and then start our work on the 24th, Monday, at 5 o'clock, although I expect the budget session actually will start at 5:30 because we're going to have executive session run from 5 to 5:20, and then we'll talk about the VY matters from about 5:20 to 5:30 on Monday the 24th. So we'll ask anybody who's going to be speaking to the budget to be here for 5:30 on Monday, and we invite members of the public to weigh in, to come and participate in this process. It's an open process, and we want everybody to participate. I would then note that I heard from a member of the Finance Committee, Town Meeting Finance Committee, that there's only one member of the Finance Committee. So if anybody is interested in participating in the Town Meeting Finance Committee, please be in touch with either the Town Meeting Moderator, Lauren Crisp, or the Town Manager's Office, which will then forward your information to Mr. Crisp. The Finance Committee has played a very important role over the course probably of the last decade or more in providing advice to town meeting about budget-related issues, and we hope we'll have a functioning Finance Committee this year. A couple of other very small and quick references. Sometimes the detail of what's going on at the town level is buried in the correspondence section in the back of the book, and so it pays to read to the very back of the book. I think that some of the things, particularly that I read with respect to Public Works, are really very exciting. At this point, we are embarking on the very last of the projects to finish up from Hurricane Irene. The outflow pipe from the wastewater treatment plant that was damaged in the hurricane has now been repaired, and there's been some repairs to other damage that was done in some more recent flooding up along the river, and we are now in construction of the Cook Road Bridge, which is the last major bridge that was washed away by the tropical storm. So I would note that those things are ongoing and are part of the daily operations of the town. I would also note something that I had not known or recognized before, which is that besides police officers, it sounds like almost 10 firefighters responded to the riots in Keene. And so we already thanked the police officers for participating in their mutual aid commitments and in the town's mutual aid commitments, but we also want to extend a specific thanks to the firefighters who also participated in that response. And then very quickly, I just want to apologize in advance. I'm on call for my day job, and if I jump up and run out of the room, it's because I have to take a call. The next item on the agenda is interim town manager's comments. Patrick?
No comments this evening.
Next matter is select board comments and committee reports.
You want me to go? Yeah, good. Okay. Police fire once again met. It wasn't a rowdy meeting. It was very calm, but we heard some different locations from the subcommittee, and that's basically where it is right now. It's kind of in flux a little bit until we get a little bit more information back from the businesses that could be acquired or the ones that maybe even are available at this point. So they're just looking into it, and they'll get back to us, I believe, at one of our next meetings. What are they trying to?
I can't remember which one.
I know, because I know it went back and forth on when they wanted to try to get back to us.
Get together again, yeah.
But do you remember?
Well, I remember the next meeting is December 5th at 3 o'clock.
Right.
And going to look at an update from that particular subcommittee.
Right.
And I think after that, try and schedule
Right.
reach out to the select board and see if we can have a discussion.
Yep. And the other thing, I just wanted to say a shout out. I've had a lot of people from Sunset Lake Road come up to me and David, you live there, so but you're below it.
Well, Stuart can speak to the bridge.
The bridge work now, maybe you'll have a different perspective on this, but Renault Brothers did a fantastic
Nice
job.
bridge.
They did and they were incredibly accommodating. So I just want to shout out to that group that they did, from what I can understand, a fantastic job.
And they were good neighbors.
And they were very good. So.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I have something. I wanted to announce something that town meeting members have had at least 2 emails from me about, and Kate has been good enough to send out to the Chamber of Commerce notice of the the elementary school district's community forum tomorrow night on testing, to talk about how we use testing and assessments to guide instruction, and also where we're going under the new Common Core. That's tomorrow night at 6 o'clock at Academy School, and I encourage people to come and learn.
That's just crossover comment.
That's right. You can say Dave on TV at different board meetings.
Oh yeah, he's all over
Days.
But you have to wait for the school ones.
Anybody else? Okay, next item on the agenda is public participation. An opportunity for anybody who wants to say something or speak to something that's not on the agenda. Mr. Johnson.
He doesn't talk enough.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board members, good evening. It is Project Feed the Thousands time again.
Here we go.
The food drive kicked off just a little over a week ago, and already a slow start, but that's to be expected. Again, the goal this year is $100,000 in cash and 200,000 meals to deal with as many as 8 food shelves, not just in Brattleboro, but all throughout the greater Windham County area. We're also helping serve the Hinsdale food shelf and the Chester Andover Family Center this year. So anything that you can do to help support us, thank you in advance. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim.
Tim, are they also running the campaign up there? I didn't mean to have you jump away, but are in Chester and?
Yes, they are working with both Chester Andover Elementary School, Green Mountain Union High School, and quite frankly, all the schools and all of the food shelves are doing a lot to bring awareness to the businesses and to various schools and drop-off points.
So those communities up there will also be notified, their select board or whatever?
Right, and the neat thing is contributions brought in one community will be serving that community. So it's not like all the food goes to a central location.
Right.
Contributions, say from Putney, would go to the Putney food shelf and so on.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good.
Is there anybody else who wants to speak during public participation? Anybody? All right, well then, hearing none. The next matter on the agenda is a series of permit requests under liquor commissioners, so we're looking for motion to convene as liquor commissioners.
Move to convene as liquor commissioners.
We have motion to convene as liquor commissioners. Is there any discussion from anybody on the board or anybody in his attendance? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. The first matter is for the Saxton's River Distillery. Is there anybody here from the Saxton's River Distillery? Well then, Patrick, maybe you'd like to tell us about the application from Saxton's River Distillery, please.
Sure. Well, as you know, the Saxton's River Distillery is seeking a special event permit. Special event permit is provided is a permit that is provided for manufacturers of wines or beers or hard alcoholic beverages to be able to provide samples and to sell glasses and along with unopened containers at special events. The event that they're seeking this in conjunction with the Cotton Mill Open House at 74 Cotton Mill Hill on Saturday, December 6th from 9 to 7, and on December 7th also from 9 to 7. And just so the board is aware, the very next permit application is a similar permit application from a separate producer, that being Whetstone Cider. So there would be 2 at this particular event.
Any questions or comments from anybody on the board? I guess my only comment or concern would be during Strolling of the Heifers last year, we saw a regular flow of applications over a period of weeks and weeks and weeks until it got to a point where the board collectively felt that there was going to be too much alcohol sales in that small space. And I think we're probably, if I can read everybody's faces, comfortable with 2, but if we wind up with 4 more next week or on December 2nd, there might be some concern.
Yeah.
So we're glad to have notice of these applications and glad to be able to support them with enough notice to think about them. Anybody who's in attendance have any comments? Well, then we're ready for motion.
I move we approve a special event permit for Saxon's River Distillery LLC for an event at Cotton Mill Studios, 74 Cotton Mill Hill, on Saturday, December 6th, from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., and on Sunday, December 7th, from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Is there any further discussion?
That's it for members.
I take it police and fire have approved this?
Yes, sir.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. So then the next matter on the agenda is, no, there's one more, is for Whetstone Cider Works LLC. I tried to tell her. For Whetstone Cider Works LLC, which also wants a special event permit to have a tasting bar at the Cotton Mill Studios on December 6 and 7 at the same event Patrick just described. Is anybody from Whetstone Cider Works here? Patrick, would it be fair to say that this special event permit request is the same as the last one, except it's a different vendor?
Yes, sir. Identical.
Okay. So anybody on the board have any questions about the Whetstone Cider Works special event permit, which is identical to the Saxon's River Distillery permit application? Anybody in attendance want to speak to it? Okay, then. Somebody want to make a motion? Kate?
I will make it. I move that we approve a special event permit for Whetstone Cider Works LLC for an event at Cotton Mill Studios, 74 Cotton Mill Hill, on Saturday, December 6th, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., and on Sunday, December 7th, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m.
We have a motion to approve a special event permit for Whetstone Cider Works. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. And then, the next matter on the agenda is a special event permit request for the co-op.
Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks.
If you'd like to introduce yourself for the people who might be watching on TV and tell us about the event, please. It's a little bit of free publicity.
I'm Sabine Ryan. I'm the Shareholder and Community Relations Manager at the Brattleboro Food Co-op. This will be our 4th holiday wine and beer tasting. We've held it last year and this year at the museum across the street from our store. It's a 2.5-hour event. There is a $20 entry fee, and all entries are screened by myself at the front door. And we serve a lot of food with it, and we have lots of water available.
I take it you also have lots of different types of alcoholic beverages for tasting.
We
at the
do.
event.
We do wines, beers, and sparkling wines, however, no spirits.
All right. Anybody have any questions about this request for a special event permit?
I'm just curious about what you educate the consumers about.
About the different varieties of wines and beers that they are tasting. There's a huge variety out there, and it gives them an opportunity to know what they are before they purchase them later at a later date.
Wine, they really are a lot of fun. I mean, I love wine dates. I think they're great.
An advocate?
Yeah. No, I really do. I mean, it gives you a
Love to
chance
see you all there.
Well, I'll be there.
Any other questions for Tom?
Is this one also going to be held at the museum?
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
And the date is?
Friday, December 12th.
Any further questions or comments from anybody on the board? Did anybody who's in attendance have any questions or comments about this special event permit? Hearing none, we're ready for a motion.
happy to make that. I move that we approve an education sampling permit for the Brattleboro Food Co-op, Inc. for their 4th annual holiday beer and wine tasting event to be held at the Brattleboro Museum and Arts Center on December 12th from 5:30 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Is there any further discussion as to the motion to approve the special event permit for the food co-op for December 12th? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thanks, Sabine.
Thank you.
Yeah, when it comes to, we'll do that. That's a good idea. So we're going to have a quick revision of the agenda, even though generally we should do it right at the beginning of the meeting, I think under Robert's rules. And the staffing level review for the engineering technician and the water treatment division staff member will be done under water and sewer commissioners. So we need a motion, please, to adjourn as liquor commissioners. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
We have a motion by Dave Scholes to adjourn as liquor commissioners. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. And then we're ready for a motion to convene as water and sewer commissioners.
So moved.
We have a motion to convene as water and sewer commissioners. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. So, the first matter under the water and sewer commissioners' agenda is a staffing level review for the engineering technician position at the Department of Public Works. Steve, could you tell us a little, would you like to introduce yourself?
I would. Good evening. I'm Steve Barrett, Director of Public Works.
I'm Hannah O'Connell, the Highway and Utility Superintendent.
Thank you. And if you could tell us a little bit about what the engineering technician does for a living.
I will. Our current engineering technician is retiring after over 30 years of service with Public Works. And we wish him the best on his retirement. And he's going to be certainly missed. It's a job that has many hats, if you will. This position looks at and does all the engineering for Public Works for all our projects, oversees any large projects that do come in, whether they be private projects or if they're public infrastructure projects. Some of the things that the chairman has talked about with Irene and the bridges being built, the outfall pipe, the Sunset Lake Road Bridge. These are all things that this engineering technician would oversee. So the job's very important. Besides that, there's a lot of record keeping. There's a lot of detailed mapping that's done to keep a good historical record of what happens at Public Works and all the piping in the ground. The current engineering technician in the future, we would hope that would also be a water treatment operator, which requires a certification for our water treatment plant. Brattleboro has 2 treatment plants that have a surface water, and we also have a groundwater system. And so this person would also be able to operate those systems. And along with that, the person actually carries another hat with a CDL driver's license, a Class B. At times this individual shovels hydrants, at times this person drives dump truck. So it's multi-purpose, and so we're really looking for support to keep this position because we feel it's important. Do you have any other comments?
I think it's just important to note that he's that person that's always there for us. You know, if we need somebody to answer the phone, if we're all out of the office, the position takes care of our hazardous waste program that's mandated by the state. He does a lot with OSHA, VOSHA, that kind of thing. Helps us out with the budget. He's very involved with rating all of our pavement and our sidewalks. That really helps us develop our capital paving plan. What else?
That's it. That's our summary. If you have any questions, we're here to answer any questions you may have.
Did you want to say something, Patrick? You're all set.
Not particularly. The only thing I would add is, you know, on a couple occasions over the last couple of years, I've had a chance to work with Gary. He definitely will be missed. He is a wealth of knowledge, and it's been really impressive to work with him over, particularly particularly through Irene and his knowledge of the existence and place and condition of our infrastructure is second to none. And look forward to getting some new young blood in there and build within him all that Gary has built up over the years.
Well, any questions from the board about the staffing level review with respect to the engineering technician position? Anybody who's in attendance have any questions about the engineering technician position or the steps we're going to be taking to fill the slot created by Mr. King's retirement? So the way the process works is the board has found it useful when people are retiring or resigning from their positions to hear from personnel at the various departments about the jobs they do and whether those are positions that we should continue forward with. But unless any real substantial question is raised, we haven't been taking any action. These have been reviews rather than approvals for staffing decisions. So we'll just move on then to the next staffing level review, which has to do with the Water Treatment Division, Department of Public Works.
See, the next vacancy that we have is a water treatment operator. That's a person who is certified to operate the water treatment systems that we have. This position, there's 3 operators and 1 chief operator. Each day we filter and produce at least 1.2 to 1.3 million gallons of water a day. Sometimes in the summer months we go up to 1.6. We've taken on some additional towns, if you will. We have Algiers now as a water system, and several years ago we also picked up the Welcome Center. So we're kind of becoming a water district, if you will. That's kind of a good thing because as time has gone on, people conserve water. So we're seeing our usage go down. In the 80s, we were up to close to 2 million gallons a day. So people using water saver kits, it all helps, but then to take on additional customers also helps ease the burden of our water and sewer bills to the customers. This position is funded all through the Utilities Division. It will require the person to get an operator's license within a year of hiring. And Hannah, if there's any other things you'd like to highlight on this. I would add that with the loss of Mr. King and some of the other operators, we're losing approximately 100 years of experience at Public Works and water treatment and water distribution. So it's a lot of experience that we're losing here. So we want to bring in some new talent and get these people trained for the future.
Tom?
Question. What does getting an operator's license entail?
It involves there's a lengthy class that operators take. It's provided by the state. It's a mirror of a national standard test. And then the person is given an exam. And there's different levels of the exam. Our water system is considered a 4C, which is a little higher because it's a bigger system with more people, a little more complex. And once they have to initially be involved with water treatment to learn some of the hands-on, then they go to a technical school, and then they take the test.
So they have a full year to get that?
They have a full year to do that
test.
because it's important to get the educational background. If you don't have a particular background in water or even wastewater, then you need that special education for it. So the classes are designed to groom people for the business because years ago there wasn't a lot of focus put onto wastewater or water treatment. So as they've developed some really good classes for that.
So having Gary King retire, we're losing a lot of knowledge.
And not only that, we're losing multiple operators. We lost 2 operators last year that had over 20 plus years. So Gary supplemented the water treatment, plus we had 2 long-term operators that retired also. So we're filling some pretty big voids.
Any further questions or comments from anybody on the board? Anybody who's in attendance have any questions about the Water Treatment Division employee who we're going to be hiring? Well, there's 2 quality job openings at the Brattleboro Department of Public Works, and anybody who's interested in the position, you're encouraged to apply. Good benefits. Stable working environment,
You take a 60-year-old?
great employer.
It's true.
I learned fast.
Any further business under Water and Sewer Commissioners? And we're ready for a motion to adjourn as Water and Sewer Commissioners.
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn as Water and Sewer Commissioners. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. The next matter on the agenda, under new business, is the financial report. John O'Connor.
Thank you, David.
Uh-oh.
Hold on, let me get ready.
All right, John. So in the packet is the financial report for the month of October, for the year end, ending October 31st. And so we're a third of the way through our fiscal year. And in the general fund, after making adjustments to prorate debt service payments, insurance payments, and our human service payments, the general fund expenditures stood at 30.7%, so under the targeted number of 33.3. The utilities fund was at 33.3%. Parking expenditures were 30.9%. And the police and fire facilities fund, which is also included in the packet, showed year-to-date expenditures of $12,862. The loan report, as of the end of October, indicates that we had $4,108,817 worth of loans outstanding for various programs. We had program income report, which is included, shows that we had an additional $398,838 left that we could hand out as grants or loans for our grant and loan programs. And then finally, the grant report provides you information on 43 active grants and 11 grants that are in the application process at this point. So if anybody has any specific questions on the financials or any of the other reports, I will certainly try to answer those questions for you.
I think the one thing I'd like to ask you, John, since I had the privilege to attend the Board of Abatement meeting about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I had to sit right next to you, if I recall correctly, over at that table.
Right.
I wonder if you could just speak a little bit just to that process. I mean, I went through the budget, and one of the things that I noticed here is that we budgeted for a certain amount of tax and interest abatements, and one of them has come in like 1,300% over what we had budgeted for it, although it's not a huge dollar item. Maybe you could just briefly explain how people come to apply for those abatements and what happens. That's something you can do for us briefly?
I can try to do that.
Thank you.
Abatements, generally people request abatements when they have a fire. There's been a death in the family of the owner of the property. Some other issue during Irene, we had several abatement requests after Irene hit the town of Brattleboro. So those are the things that people generally come to us and request an abatement for. And the process is they fill out a form with Annette Cappy, and Annette is the one that arranges the abatement meetings, and she calls the Board of Civil Authority. The Select Board can be a member of the Board of Abatement. I'm a member of the Abatement Board. And all of the applications, Annette pulls all the applications together, and when she has enough, she schedules a meeting with those parties to consider those applications. And so anybody who's facing a difficulty or a tragedy with their property, should file an abatement request, especially if they're having financial difficulties in dealing with that.
Hard sometimes to predict what's going to be in the abatement line. Is that fair to say?
It's very, very fair to say. I mean, we never could have predicted the number of abatements that happened after Tropical Storm Irene.
Because many of those properties became totally unusable.
They did.
Any other questions from anybody on the board?
I have two. One is like an obvious one, but I'm going to ask it anyway. On the police fire facility, it appears that we're not paying an architect, we're not paying an engineer, and are we not paying Steve Horton?
We have paid Steve Horton some, and that's why there's a small amount of money there.
Where's
That's
that?
generally Steve Horton.
Oh, that is? Oh, project management?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's one question. Then I found this little thing, everybody can be excited, I actually looked at this. On the monthly loan report,
Yep.
October, there's this thing, down at the RLF Other, which is like the fourth box down.
I see that.
It's the default, the $242,000, it says Leslie Prop.
Yes.
Does that affect us in any way?
No, that happened quite a while ago. Leslie Properties is what that is. And I believe they own a building out near exit 1. And they had a loan, and that building is occupied by, I can't remember. Kim, do you recall who that building is occupied by? Okay. This happened quite some time ago, though. That loan was issued back in 1986. And they defaulted shortly after the loan was issued. That loan is fully reserved. In other words, we have set up an offsetting entry to offset the loan in case they never do pay the loan. There's going to be no further impact on the financial condition of the fund because we've already reserved for that. Okay. But yeah, the building is still occupied, and we have a claim on that building in the case that I think it's a second claim. I think it's somehow we still have this interest in that property. So that's why we haven't written the loan off. We've simply reserved for it because we do continue to have an interest in that property.
Thank you.
Anybody else with any questions about the financials?
Good.
Anybody who's in attendance have any questions about our financial statements? Could I ask a little bit about the status of the audit? I know that neither last year nor this year have the auditors yet come to speak to members of the select board, and I know that we or I are available to speak with them if they want. Could you talk with us? I know it was in your report and correspondence. Talk with us a little bit about the current progress, as you understand it, of the auditor's work and when that will be completed and what they do.
Okay. The auditor's field work is completed. I've prepared the financial statements. The auditors have reviewed the financial statements that I've prepared. We have met and talked about minor adjustments to those statements, and we've come to an agreement. So we have the draft statements completed. We have all the draft footnotes completed. I have completed the management discussion and analysis part of that audit report. That's complete. So basically, it's very far along. It's in the very final draft stages and final review by the auditors themselves to make sure that everything that's contained in that report is accurate and has been looked at by several sets of eyes to ensure that everything matches up correctly. So we're hoping to have that report no later than the end of December, and hopefully we'll have it before then.
Excellent. And it's as part of that report that we get to see the snapshot of what the fund balance is at the end of the fiscal year. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Well, you gave us a number last time or the time before, and that's a pretty good snapshot as of the day you told us.
Yes. I don't think that number's changed. And the last time we talked, the unassigned fund balance was somewhere near $2.5 million. But again, that was offset a little bit by the non-spendable fund balance that went down by about $300,000 because we didn't prepay the insurance to VLCT.
Great. So we'll look forward to having very specific numbers about what is the unreserved, undesignated fund balance that we could dip into to help fund various expenses in fiscal year 2016 if we decided to proceed that way for the meetings on Monday and Tuesday.
That's true. You will have that, and I can bring that number. It's probably going to be about 2.1 million.
Thank you. Well, that'll be nice to hear.
Unassigned fund balance.
Pot of gold.
Excellent. Well, yep, thank you. Any other questions from anybody who's in attendance or anybody on the board about the financial report or any related issues? All right, so the next matter on the agenda is the West Brattleboro Bicycle Pedestrian Scoping Study. And we have here a representative, I think, from RSG, is that correct?
Yes.
And your name is?
Dirk Grodenhuis. Dirk Grodenhuis.
Dirk Grodenhuis. And I guess maybe Steve, if you could just do a quick introduction about what got us here.
Yep.
And then Mr. Grodenhuis can do his presentation.
Okay, thank you. Steve Barrett, Director of Public Works, Hannah O'Connell, the Highway Utilities Superintendent here, and of course Dirk Grodenhuis has introduced himself, who's the chairman. What we're here tonight to discuss is the Western Avenue School Scoping Study, and this goes back quite a ways, and I'll just go through a brief history of it. Back some time ago, back 2012, the Traffic Safety Committee had actually come up with a recommendation to focus in some different areas to improve safety on Western Avenue. So what we looked at was a VTrans bicycle and pedestrian grant as a way to help fund some of these programs. We realized some of the difficulties that we have with some of our local funding challenges, so that this actually gives us a method to look at some of these safety issues in a broader way. Together, we had looked at Union Hill, and we'd also looked at this area in West Brattleboro between what's Academy School to Greenleaf Street. There was a focus in that area at the time because it's a pretty mixed area. The demographics of that area include churches, you have a school, you have elderly housing, you have mixed housing, you have stores and shops, you have a common. So there's quite a few elements in that village area. And you have a street that in some areas is approximately 80 feet wide. So that's why things were really narrowed down to that area. What happened in 2012 is the Traffic Safety Committee came before the board and asked for their blessing to proceed with an application for this grant. And at the time, the board did support an application for this VTrans grant for safety and pedestrian bicycle improvements in this area. And also it was again combined with Union Hill, but we want to stay pretty much focused on this area that we're talking about tonight, which is the Academy School area from Melrose up to Greenleaf Street. The hearing was conducted, and the board approved it again 5-0. And then in a year later, about this time, November 5th, RSG was selected and joined our team to proceed with this scoping study. And at the time, this select board actually approved the contract, the recommendation that our select group came up with to pick RSG. And so here we are today. So, the goal of the scoping study is to identify the issues and potential improvements that can be made in this area. Hannah has taken a lead on this project and done a wonderful job, and really reached out to a lot of people and worked closely with this company. So together, her and Dirk are going to give you a presentation, and this is open. This is a public hearing for people that may have comment, and also for the select board for any questions that they have about the process and whatever. And the only thing I did want to mention is West Brattleboro Association. I did make a note that they were active and did support this project also last year at the time when we supported the selection of this engineering firm. So with that, I'll turn it over to Hannah.
Well, let me make sure procedurally, since you say it's a public hearing, if there's any further introduction from anybody, well then we'll formally open the public hearing about the RSG scoping study for West Brattleboro, the Academy School area. And this is the opportunity for the draft of the study to be presented in public, and for comments to be taken on it before the select board votes whether to endorse and accept the report as presented. So, Mr. Grodenhuis and Hannah, table is yours. Floor is yours.
Get some of the nitty-gritty facts out of the way. This total grant is for $35,000, and this is through the V-Trans Bicycle and Pedestrian. It's the V-Trans Bicycle and Pedestrian Grant, and they used to be local transportation facilities, and now they're the Municipal Assistance Division. So it's been a little bit of change in that. This includes a 10% town match, so up to $3,500. There is, and the funding from V-Trans is a combination of both state and federal funding. And the grant deadline is, to have everything completed, is December 15th, 2014. That Kim keeps reminding me, so we're hoping to get this sealed up and shipped up to V-Trans. So one of the things that we really wanted to make sure everybody understands tonight is what exactly a scoping study is. And I think sometimes it can be kind of a nebulous concept, maybe a little bit difficult to understand. And so I'm going to try to paint a picture, and Derek, if I miss anything, feel free to jump in. It really tells us what we can do, and defines our limitations. And, you know, it's big ideas, it's concept, it's not a design. This report does not include a set of plans. It's really like big picture kind of ideas. What can we do with the space we have? How can we make it better?
It's a planning exercise, and it's done at a higher level with just existing conditions, existing documents, existing data. So there isn't the expense of going out and getting field surveys. You know, we're using mapping that's available. We're using crash data that's available without, you know, the increased expense of going out and collecting a lot of that actual data. So it's a planning exercise.
We also wanted to point out, too, that this project within the scope just doesn't stop at the scope. There's an eye on the outside these parameters. So, for instance, if we're working between Melrose Bridge, say, and Greenleaf Street, there's still an eye to be looking at what's going to happen between Melrose and going down to the Premier Bridge. What's going to happen between Greenleaf Street and up to Edward Heights. So it's just, there's a vision there also for a build-out.
And it just provides a better roadmap for, you know, success of bicycling and pedestrian safety in that, not only in that corridor but beyond that. You know, this is just a small segment of that road, and it could be branched out into the adjoining segments.
And so we've kind of been getting some feedback from, you know, the public about why did we do this. It seems like it's you know, it's like, let's see some construction. How do we get there? And so this is really preliminary engineering. It's pointing us in the right direction. And V-Trans, actually, they don't recommend it, but it's very strongly recommend. They don't require it. It's very strongly recommended if we're going to move forward with more funding to implement some of these changes. If we apply for grants to make changes and we don't have this type of preliminary step, then, you know, they may not fund it as favorably.
Does V-Trans have a lot of input on this?
They do. They've been working with us daily, every single step of the way, and
in a good way.
Excellent. And I gotta give Wendy Pelletier a big shout out. I think she's watching from up in Montpelier tonight, and she has been incredibly knowledgeable and assists us. It seems like 24/7 sometimes.
It's been a great deal of support. It's a very complex, web of different agencies and such, and Wendy's been wonderful to reach out with her contacts to make that all come together. And that's important.
No, it is. That's why I asked if it was a mutual agreement.
And one of the things, because there's federal dollars involved,
Right.
there's obviously a process that has to be followed, even when there's state and municipal, but more so when there's federal dollars involved. So this is a very typical type of study that would be done at the earlier stages, just prior to design. So you could walk away with this scoping study and then just start implementing the design phases. But another thing with the funding is because it's so competitive, there's a lot of criteria for each grant, and whether it's safe routes to school or whether it's a bike ped, or transportation alternatives, there's a lot of other communities trying to get those dollars. And so a document like this helps each town be able to achieve that. So it really does put you up into a higher level of award possibility.
And one of the big things that the scoping study allows us to do is really raise a lot of public awareness for the project and get a lot of support and input for that as well. And we've held 2 local concerns meetings already. We've discussed it multiple times at traffic safety. We wanted to come here tonight to not only inform the select board, but also have a televised presentation of this to reach the people who can't come out to the meetings. So, that's a really great aspect of this program.
And even more so than just the presentation, it's just the getting the information back. And it's really important to listen what's important to the stakeholders. We met with the fire department individually. We met with academy school principal and staff. And we met with abutters and people that came to the public meeting and really had a good input session of really what this community wants to see in this area. So this is kind of a culmination of that, and it's really important because that's what really informs the decisions that can be made is through that public process.
So I think, move on to maybe talk about the grant timeline. Seems like this is a really long process, and it is. This has been going on for quite a while. As Steve mentioned, this was applied for back in 2012, and we were awarded the grant in February of 2013. In September of 2013, we put it out to bid. And I know that's a long period of time, but we worked really closely with Wendy Pelletier to make sure that we fully understood the requirements of this grant, that when we drew up our request for proposals from the engineering company, that we had a really good, solid document, so we got what we wanted. And we awarded it in November of 2013. The process of awarding this bid is not through the low bid procedure, but it's through a ranking system. And we had a group of, it was Steve and I, Gary King, it was Captain Fitzgerald at the time, who's now graduated to chief and a member of the planning department. And then in March and May of this year, we held local concerns meetings. One of them was very, very well attended. We got a lot of feedback at that. Really good conversation. I know Matt Mann was able to be there. Like I said before, we've brought this to multiple traffic safety meetings, had several different presentations and some good conversations there as well. And here we are tonight, having kind of our final public meeting. And so, I guess maybe the big question is what did RSG, and they also worked in partnership with Broadreach Planning and Design, out of Charlotte, Vermont. And so what did they do for us? What did they do as part of this report? They held a ton of meetings. As they said, we've met with the West Brattleboro Association. We met with fire department staff to talk about, what kind of unique issues it might create having the fire department at that funky intersection. We met with academy school staff, faculty, some parents that had some concerns. And then a lot of individual stuff, land use and zoning, right-of-way, research, environmental stuff, preparing for EPA documentation. Did a lot of research on crash history, existing conditions. They developed this report, which includes the 3 alternatives that Derek is going to discuss in a minute. And I think I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Okay. I was asked to be brief, so it is a report. It's available online.
Yep,
It's
still
available
on the town
online.
website.
And it's, 70 some odd pages of information that we'll cover in about 5. So I'm just going to kind of scroll through the alternatives. And what we did is when in these scoping studies, you want to make sure that you have just more than one alternative. If Steve came to me and said, we need to do this on this road, that really wouldn't be prudent. So we want to make sure we're getting different alternatives, different ideas out into the public so that we can vet through some constraints and come up with some good ideas, and maybe some ideas that the planning and the engineering didn't come up with. So it's really a collective way of getting information. So we developed 3 alternatives. Actually, there's kind of 5, but we call them 3 alternatives because one of the alternatives is kind of a do-nothing. So there's a no-build. That's an alternative. The community doesn't have to do this project, but there are significant, safety issues that happen out there, and there's, a lot of improvements and a need for this project. So, that's one of the options here, and the 3 options or alternatives we went through really kind of boiled down to a preferred alternative right at the end. And that kind of takes some pieces from each alternative itself. So we went through, alternative 1 is really just a continuous bike lane and sidewalks along each side. Number 2, or the alternative 2, was having a curbed median in the center of the roadway. And that allows, and I'll go through some graphics really quickly, that allows some pedestrian refuges in the middle of the road. And it increases that pedestrian safety to a higher threshold. And then this was kind of, let's see what we can do that's not on the roadway. We created an option that has a shared use path, which is kind of overland, not adjacent to the roadway. So in alternative 1, as I mentioned, we've got a continuous 5-foot sidewalk on both sides of the street, continuous 5-foot bike lanes on both sides of the street, and that's really the whole premise of this concept. And there are other little nuances to it that can be picked out and used in different fashions. In this one, we decided that why don't we go ahead and, knowing that the fire department was potentially going to be moving at that time to the lot adjacent, that we could look at closing South Street. What would that do? Well, South Street had a lot of accidents in our crash data that we reviewed, exiting out onto Western Avenue. And so that was one way of making it a little bit simpler. So there isn't a lot of turning movements really close to each other at those intersections. We looked at maybe an option of having a bus lane with a boarding island and having the bus station there be right adjacent so the bus can come right up directly to them. And I should say, sorry, I should apologize here. I could orientate you guys. Greenleaf's at the top of the page here, and we're kind of moving west to east. And there are going to be two graphics for each alternative. So this is kind of the central core and to the east. And we'd introduce a couple of left turn lanes to make it a little bit safer to turn into the school. A curbed center island in front of the school. That's a high crossing right there with the kids. So we want to make that a little bit safer. And then there are some areas that we could add some on-street parking, and there are other areas that we would have off-street or on-street parking removed. And that can be a couple of good things about that. Is it's much safer for bicyclists and also pedestrians crossing a much narrower area. So that's what we'd call alternative one, is just the continuous sidewalk and bike lanes. And these are on-road bike lanes, so they're 4 to 5 feet wide, and very similar to, I think you guys have them striped out there now. It would just be some additional striping.
Dirk, before you move to alternative two, if you could go back to that alternative one picture, the second one. No, that one. You spoke earlier about closing South Street, and I'm not sure that the real meaning and significance of that was clear when you said it that way. So if you could just point out on alternative one there, when you talk about closing South Street, what are you proposing as part of this alternative one?
So South Street is this street here and this street here. I should say that. Actually, I've got a pointer. Maybe it's easier if I sit down.
And I don't know if the other picture is better, because there's another picture that's better in the binder, but
Well, yeah.
That one's not bad.
this is sort of in the middle.
So, South Street here, the fire station's right in here. The existing one's here. The new one was going to go here. This is the Village Green, which is through here. South Street actually connects through it, but we've greened it out, just adding some more park area to that. So we want to try and maximize that park area, because really all that South Street in this segment is doing, it has 2 driveways. And that's really the main, not the main reason, but if we were to close South Street, those would be impacted certainly. All the other vehicles that are just trying to get onto a Western Avenue can come down to this intersection here. It's in a more safer T intersection versus this kind of this Y. So it makes it a much safer access onto Western.
So to be clear, part of this alternative one, and one of the things that you at least look at preliminarily, is closing the western leg of South Street from where the road goes up to the West Village Meeting House, and west from that location towards Western Avenue, so that all traffic would have to exit from South Street in front of the fire station and either turn left or right at the T.
Exactly, correct.
Very different configuration from what we have now.
Yes.
And that doesn't, it seems like it would bother you a little bit that all the traffic now goes in front of the fire station, but...
Well, you know, we talked to, this was one of the things that came out of one of our meetings with the fire department. And they have, you know, they currently do that right now. They currently access right onto South Street to Western Avenue. The volume of traffic isn't a lot.
Okay.
So we did look at that. And we felt that if there was a call being made, there's certainly enough area or space there to have the cars stop, and they could get onto their call without any really impedance.
And I think it's important to note, maybe you could go to the other picture. There you go. It's a little bit easier to see in this that it really relieves a lot of stress from that Bonneville Road, Glen Street, South Street intersection. You know, you've got 3 roads.
Yeah.
So I don't.
You know, you've got 3 roads coming together, and the South Street one's at a funky, there's some kind of low visibility because of the bridge that's right there. So it kind of takes some people away from that intersection. So that's, and there's also a crosswalk in there already, so when you're adding that traffic confusion with some people trying to cross, you know, it kind of alleviates that a little bit.
I want to clarify in terms of process. I think that it's fine to interrupt to clarify certain parts of this.
Yeah.
While we're going through it, I think that's useful, but there will also be an opportunity at the end of the presentation just to raise any issues that anyone wants to talk about.
By the end of the presentation, I would have forgot that question.
And that's fine. Just jump in. If you need to say move your head, Dirk, you can do that. So I'm going to go on to alternative 2. So this is where we were talking, or I talked about having a median down the middle. And so one of the things this does is it does not allow a 5-foot bike lane. There isn't enough space because we're keeping the curbs the same locations that they are right now, for the most part, the outer curbs. So when we look at having some of the parking and traffic lanes, travel lanes, there isn't room left for bike lanes. So what is known as sharrows or shared lanes is where vehicles and bicyclists use the same lane, and they're a little bit wider. So instead of a standard travel lane of, say, 12 feet, this might be 14 feet wide. That allows a little bit more room for vehicles and the bicyclists to move together. So that's the main difference, is there's a bike lane or a shared lane. The median would be a curved median. It would have landscape in it where it's wide enough. We'd have just a separate bus pull-off at the park, or at the Village Green. And one of the things I did want to mention about the Village Green is when we met with the association, that really, I mean, that was really an important thing to them, is try and get as much room as possible. It's a smaller park, so we really want to have more room if we can, and that's why we started looking at possibly closing South Street and taking over some more greened area. In fact, in this concept or alternative, we decided to take the north leg of South Street and have that be maintained, and kind of that south and east lane on South Street. Here's South Street again. So instead of having all the traffic go this direction, we said, let's get all the traffic going this direction, make some improvements to that angle. And so that really could create a much larger kind of green area, community building. What is that fire building going to be used for?
Storage.
Okay. So it's a great
That's right,
opportunity.
it's a sensitive topic, so you can poke it out as much as you like. We won't blanch.
I mean, it's a community area, so I mean there is some opportunity, and I'll just leave it at that. These are things we look at, and so that's why it's in a separate alternative. These could be looked at in the collective alternative. What else is new for this one is that's about the main things. We added an additional crossing to the east, and right now there's a sidewalk only on the north side of the road. And so if we're introducing pedestrians along the south side of the road, we need to get them across to the north side of the road, and vice versa. We want to get these homes here to be able to get across and get to the school, because they're just going to cross there inherently anyway. It's a desire line, so we want to make sure that we provide a safe crossing for them.
I have a question. You mentioned with alternative 1 some sort of curved island in front of either Academy or the church near Academy. It sounds like this curved median concept, which is alternative 2, involves much more of a curved island than what you were referring to in the first one, if I understood it correctly. Could you explain, what did you mean by curved island near Academy for alternative 1, and what do you mean by curved medians for alternative 2?
Sure. So alternative 1, curved median that we have is very similar to alternative 2. We provide a little bit more room on the north side. So when we're talking about in alternative 1, we're trying to get as much room in there for the bike lanes, so we can have bike lanes through there. So really the only really wide area is right through here, and that's where it's something like 80 feet. As you go towards the north and west, it gets narrower, so there isn't enough room to do a curved island. In alternative 2, We have show the school. We have much larger curved islands and all the way up to the north.
Can I just ask a question?
No, go for it. That's
That curved island there, is that really right now pretty much where all the stuff that's going on there now is going on? You know, the stray, the stray
Yeah,
thing, okay.
mostly what you see, you know, when you go by and you see the pavement markings that are there, this would be more of a landscaped feature. It would have curbing and then filled with earth. And there's other things you can do within those areas.
And it
you know, some
wouldn't
low
come out.
planting.
It wouldn't come out in the winter. I mean, all of that protection is gone as soon as they start plowing.
Yeah.
Right.
And so the difference between alternative 1 and alternative 2 as to medians or islands is that there are more islands going west in alternative 2, but as to the median or island that's right in front of the church near Academy School, that's pretty much the same in alternative 1 and 2.
Yes, it's a very similar because we still have to make the turning movements to get into the church and school.
Yep.
And into that loop, that one-way loop there.
Thank you.
Yep. So this is where we had some planners really thinking hard and said, well, what else can you do to get pedestrians from A to B and maybe a C in between? So this one is a shared use path. We looked at having a pathway behind the buildings but parallel to the roadway. So this would run from Greenleaf all the way down back of these buildings, is the commercial building here, 7-Eleven, and then you can link up on the roadway here and come down. And these are, again, some conceptual directions of how to get there. And it could come back up onto the roadway, adjacent to the roadway through here. It can link to the school. This one, you know, has some constraints, some that we didn't feel valid to really bring all the way through to a full conceptual design. So this is kind of where we left off, but I'll explain a little bit more.
That one's kind of why.
Well, one of the things here is that, you know, this would have to be, you know, abutters and property owners would have to agree and be involved with this.
Right.
And whether they would like, you know, a nice path in their back of their property or wouldn't. I mean, it was a big decision point. But it's an alternative. We wanted to look at something that's that we can validate, or in this case, we can dismiss. So when I say dismissed, we did dismiss that. We came up with a preferred alternative. So listening through the public input with review at VTrans, we went through a pretty lengthy review of the draft study report, and with input from traffic and safety. The preferred alternative that this study moves forward with is really mostly the first alternative. And the primary reason for that was that one of the purposes of the study was to enhance bicycling or get better facilities for bicycles to get to the school or to get through this corridor. And with a shared lane, most people felt that that would be kind of age restricting, that some people would not feel comfortable riding in the same lane as a vehicle versus having a dedicated bike lane, which I agree with. I think most people feel more comfortable riding a bike in a bike lane. You'd get more people to ride in them, more youth, and in a community area with the school there, it might encourage more people to ride their bikes to school. So that was one of the reasons we were going with that alternative. We also did look at the speed limits out there. There's two. All right, if you're a truck, you have to go slower than a car. So one thing we wanted to do was just make a recommendation to make it consistent, and we have recommended a 30-mile all-vehicle speed limit.
Just one quick, does the bridge come into effect in any of this? You know, the little bridge down by Diamond Stone?
Melrose Bridge? Yeah, so Whetstone Brook.
Right.
It does, and
Okay, I don't mean to jump ahead. I was just wondering, because that always seems like a very tight,
I probably should have mentioned it, although it's really kind of light in this in this presentation here. But so Whetstone Brook comes through by Melrose,
Yep.
and the bridge is right in this area. So with the first alternative, we also recommended having a sidewalk on the south side to make this connection here. It's a very narrow area. It's not really comfortable to ride a bike across that, or really even to walk across it.
Stepping stones?
Yeah.
So we recommended a pedestrian bicycle bridge,
Right.
a separate bridge from the existing one that's there, to get people safely across. And here's the hope here is that this project will continue on to another project that will make all these connections, to downtown. And so we recommended a separate pedestrian bridge. There is, which I'll show you in the preferred alternative, this bridge is on VTrans list for replacement. A lot of bridges are on that list. So, the ultimate solution would be great to have a wider bridge that
Sidewalks on both sides.
handles vehicles, pedestrians, and bicycles. But that's not going to happen today or tomorrow. Something like this, could start in motion where we could have this pedestrian bridge, and then if the project came along further in the future, that pedestrian bridge, which is just a prefabricated steel bridge, could be moved to somewhere else in the community. So that was the idea of having that. So we wanted to make sure that, we had connection to the other side of the bridge, and that wasn't just a pinch point. So, yes.
Further on that point, at the Traffic Safety Committee meetings, Matt Mann from Winter Eagle Commission has indicated that at least it's his understanding that Melrose Bridge is not just on the VTrans list for replacement, but he's at least suggested that it may be high on their list for replacement because of the volume of traffic that crosses it and how crucial it is to massive amounts of travel. But just what that means, high on their list for replacement, is way, way unclear to me. And I don't know if we're talking 2 years or 10 years or 50 years. And I don't know if Steve or Rod or Patrick can shed any light on
There was a
that.
project that wasn't done that many years to restabilize the concrete facade on that. And so the bridge itself is pretty stable. So, and then Hannah, we did talk a little bit to VTrans about when, and that's out there. We don't really know.
There isn't a time frame. It is on their list.
Did that bridge get a little, and I don't want to get sidetracked or anything, but did that get damaged a little bit in Irene? Or
No.
It didn't?
No, the abutments were fine. There was no scouring of the footings or anything of that nature. So there's some just on the downstream that just was rebuilt with armor. So the things in blue on this is the same things we were in alternative one. We've refined those a little bit. We've added a couple things. We've tweaked a couple things. If we were talking about the Village Green, this is a little bit another twist on that, is that we would have potentially closing South Street completely and allowing just a driveway access out to Western Ave here, and then a driveway access out through here. And that could potentially get that Village Green much larger, much more depth to it. So there's some potential with that. And by the configuration that we have in this first alternative, we could bump this curb line out a little bit. That's what is planned here, and add a little bit more along the roadside for that Village Green. I wanted to quickly mention the phase line, but the project could be done in phases, and it doesn't really matter totally the order of those phases, because usually the funding, if this is going to be through a grant, isn't going to fund the total amount for all of these improvements. So we wanted to look at recommending a couple of phases so that we can
take them off at chunks. So I've just drawn in a phase line. That's probably the most easiest phase to think about. It just gets from intersection to intersection, Bonnievale to Greenleaf. And on the central and the western area here, VTrans commented on having white painted crosswalks for much higher visibility. We had previously shown some decorative or colored crosswalks, so we agreed that that's probably better for increased safety. And again, another phase line, so we could phase this into maybe 4 phases. The pedestrian bridge, which is a pretty expensive piece to the project. That south sidewalk, that really isn't needed until there is a pedestrian bridge. So then it would be the other phase there. So costs. These are approximate costs, but I want to throw them out there because everybody wants to know what the dollars are. The project is under $1 million. Most of the grants that are out there are between $200,000 and $300,000. That's usually about the grant award for a project this size. So you could do that in 3 phases. And the lowest costing one, I do have an asterisk that it didn't include any property taking or ownership of easements or any of that. So that might have gone up quite a bit more. That's the presentation that I had. Sorry we took a little longer.
Well, we're glad that it took a little longer to help provide more information. Thank you.
Well, there's a lot of data and a lot of information, in the study. And as Hannah mentioned, working on it for a year, I as an engineer, I get very vested into these things. And I don't see this as a project that's coming to an end for us, but it's a project that can be, leapfrogged into the future for the community.
What I'd like to do now as part of the public hearing is take comments. I think what we'll do is go in reverse order. So before the board makes its comments, and I have a series of comments also that I'd like to make, but we'll hear from anybody who's in attendance. So if there's anybody who's in attendance who wants to ask any questions or raise any concerns, now would be a good time. Ma'am, what's your name? You should speak in that microphone. It won't amplify, but it'll make them be able to hear you on TV.
In front of 7-Eleven, the crosswalk there is very dangerous, and I've watched a lot of people get stuck there, myself included, for a long time because cars just don't stop. Or if a car does stop, the one that's going to turn doesn't. Or, you know what I'm saying? There's just a lot of things going on in that area, and it doesn't seem very safe for a crosswalk.
One of the things that we, again, it's some of the details that are in the study, but one of the things we did look at was some access control for 7-Eleven, because there's a very wide access on the southern driveway, and then the other driveway is very close to the next intersection. And we looked at ways that we could try and put some curbing in, but allow, obviously, access into that business, but in a safer way. So we did a couple of different options with this, because there's also the parking spaces that are adjacent to the building that's just south of 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
This is 7-Eleven right in here, and there's some commercial spaces in here. So we've included, right now they head-in park right up to the building. And we've just taken an option of revising that and making it parallel parking along that area, because it's very dangerous to have those parked cars that are head-in and people trying to walk behind those parked cars in not really a designated sidewalk.
Right. So
we wanted to try and eliminate that danger and put pedestrians into a crosswalk or into a sidewalk so that they can
that would be great.
Not have the vehicle conflicts.
Also, would there be a turn lane there still? There didn't used to be a turn lane years ago, but when they put the turn lane in going west,
On Greenleaf? The turn lane into Greenleaf?
Yes, and the store. Traffic started going much faster when that happened. I don't know if that was looked at or not.
We certainly looked at, the speed data that we were provided, and
Well, I'm saying that the turn lane itself, I think.
We did have discussions about the turn lane, and there's even at traffic safety, there's, same at Union Hill, there used to be turn lanes there, and those were eliminated. There's a theory that if you do have a turn lane, then it moves more traffic, but then if you're in a crosswalk and you have a person that's yielding to go left, that it may blind the pedestrian. So there has been discussion in this process, and I think that's something that we have to consider at each intersection. It's a traffic flow issue and a pedestrian safety issue. On Union Hill, we elected to eliminate that turn lane. So those are things that can be talked about, but also we need to look at the traffic volumes and other things. That's a good comment.
Thank you. Somebody else want to comment? Michael?
Michael Bosworth. I just want to start by saying I'm currently the board president of the West Brattleboro Association, but there's too many details for West Brattleboro Association to serve a position on everything, but it's been discussed extensively at our meetings. So most of what I present here is more my opinions, but I think a lot of the West Brattleboro Association trustees would not object to them, but they're really more my opinions. Well, I do commend the open and public process that Hannah and Steve and the consultants brought to the whole project. Thank you very much for that. And support the study in general because, as you said, it's a necessary step to actual physical improvements, but we all realize for a while the road will still be a dangerous one. I agree with the two major themes of the report's preferred alternative, having the widened sidewalks and having the bike paths going in both directions. So having that as sort of the overriding theme, I think that's a good one. And I agree that until such time as the Melrose Street Bridge actually gets replaced, having the temporary prefabricated pedestrian, and you said tonight bike bridge perhaps, on the south side would make walking there safer. And I like, as you mentioned, that the solution to what's too complicated intersection of South Street, Bonneville, Glen Street, that the proposed solution would also provide the community more green space, and that's something that the West Brattleboro Association has been interested in for a long time. Our original vision, close to 10 years ago now, had this sort of a wide common in the middle of this whole area. I think, that was really a concept which I don't think there was enough room for, really having a sort of a common that's sort of like what they have up in Woodstock. If you really keep the travel lanes, you have enough room for bike paths and for sidewalks, that vision, along with being an expensive vision, there really wouldn't have been room for that wide a common. So other steps to increase the green space, I think, is a very good one, and we like that. And while we're on the subject of the green space, I'm not sure, I couldn't tell whether the island in front of the Congregational Church is basically the same size it is today, or is it pushed out a little, or is there any?
It's pushed out a little bit.
Okay, which I think is a good thing just for making the road less wide, and I think also having more of a feel of green space in the middle of the village. And I'm in agreement with most of the other recommendations. I think there are three that I think we should take a closer look at. One of them was brought up already, the Greenleaf Street intersection, whether to get rid of that left turn lane or not. I think when it comes down to the detailed engineering, that should be looked at. The details of turning, if you're heading eastbound and you want to turn into the George Miller Drive, the preferred alternative has sort of this long median island, and wonder whether one of the benefits of that is for pedestrians crossing across at the very wide spot, they'll have a safe place in the middle of crossing, but whether that could be done with a smaller island so that traffic could still turn into George Miller Drive if they're heading eastbound. but still have this little island somewhere for the pedestrians. So, and the other thing, when I read more of the report recommends getting rid of a lot of the parking spaces along the north side of the road near the Stockwell building. And we are hoping for some additional village-scale business in the future. So cutting down the easy, simple parking could impact that. I realize that it may be a trade-off. There may not be enough room for wider sidewalks and bike paths in either direction and still have room for those parking spaces. But I hope at the time of the actual detailed design, the parking spaces will stay unless there's no way around that. And that's it. Thank you. I look forward to one day seeing many of these actually take place. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. McDermott.
Thank you. I'm Stuart McDermott, one of the trustees of the West Brattleboro Association, and I would also like to thank Steve, Hannah, and Dirk for your work. You've been open to the community, and it's been great working with you. I just wanted to make sure the Select Board knows that the West Brattleboro Association really has participated in these discussions to come to this place. I know over 15 years ago, I've been a part of a committee that studied rerouting Route 9 even, and joining up with Route 30. And so over the years, there's been a lot of discussion, and people have participated in this a lot. And to come to pretty much agreeing on the preferred alternative here. I won't go into any specifics. I think Michael has covered those very well, and I pretty much agree with them. Most, I think, as most of our community does. But this isn't plans, right? It's nothing set in concrete here. Steve, when we started all this grant stuff quite a while ago now, has said that one thing is that if this study is made, it's a real step in the right direction. That with this study, we can go ahead and do other things. So, without saying anything more, I would really encourage the Select Board, by accepting and endorsing the report, Brattleboro will have an easier time accessing the state resources for future projects consistent with the recommendations in this report. Thanks.
Thank you, Stuart. Anybody else who's in attendance want to speak to this? Mr. Montgomery.
Tad Montgomery. One quick thought as an avid bicyclist in town. There are phases and then phases within phases here, and then phases beyond that, stretching it out to the west and then doing the work to the east. As a bicyclist, the section of Route 9 that's hardest for me to navigate, and the one that I feel most dangerous bicycling, is actually the section to the east of that. And including the bridge, which is horrendous. It is horrendous. Right to the Route 91. And so I would just encourage you all to expedite that as your ability allows.
Thank you, Ted. Anybody else who's in attendance want to speak to this RSG report? Howard?
Just a clarification. So you said the state gives out $200,000-$300,000 grants, and you could do this in phases. Would the state give that much money for one project? Is that?
State typically would not give out. It all depends on every grant cycle. In my experience, I've seen them come out with $200,000 to $300,000 grants being awarded to communities that have these needs. As far as a $1 million grant to do all of it, I haven't seen that.
But I mean, they'd give you $200,000 for one phase, and then maybe $200,000 in 2 years for a second phase.
Yeah, that's
one. The state does give it out that way.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of success stories, in Hartford and in Putney, where they really just started with a scoping study like this. They've started one phase, they went all the way through design into construction, used that in the grant application to say, you know what, we need to continue on down to this next, milestone or this next place, and they've been awarded those grants. And I know those communities have gotten 3, 4 different types of grants.
Yeah, Hartford actually, right now, they have 4 concurrent grants through this program in VTrans to complete the construction that was recommended by their scoping study. So, you may not get it all at once, but, VTrans has told us they're really eager to see these projects, go from, start to finish. So they're...
But does that have the potential to make it extend a long way away? Does that make the project that much further down the road? Every time you apply for, instead of doing it all at once, which, who knows if you can afford.
Well, I mean, the reality is that there's very few, if any, funding agencies that are going to cut us a check for $940,000. So unless it's municipally funded, it's
I don't know who you're looking at.
It's our only option, and it is slow and can be frustrating, and sometimes maybe seem a little bit hopeless, but it's definitely a process.
That's what worries me a little bit about, putting it in phases, that it does extend it that much further down the road.
All right, so anybody else who's in attendance? I didn't see any other hands. So now board members.
I have a question, and it's just piggybacking off the recent discussion. For the preferred alternative, imagining that we were able to secure a grant between $200,000 and $300,000, what would be the likely phase 1 starting place?
Well,
Right.
it could be either end. It really could. I mean, you'd really want to start at either end and work your way towards the other end. So if you want to work from north to south or west to east, that's what we would recommend. We threw some phasing lines in there. Like, that's probably about a $300,000 project. And, that phase might be a $400,000 project, and the bridge is a $100,000 project, the pedestrian bridge. So you can split it up, and we've made some of those recommendations in the report.
We've had a lot of discussions, too, about looking at the area and then maybe having a discussion where if we go back to Greenleaf Street, is there a higher accident rate, or is there, a situation where people are more at risk, that should we start there? So there's, that's another thing as we go forward, but I would encourage discussions on an area that we can improve, that have a real true meaning right off.
Anything else from home? Okay.
Just reinforcing the process of getting community involvement. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Oh, my question is, and maybe this is a premature question, but if we support this tonight, what happens next?
So if this is supported, it would mean that we're able to begin, or that we would actively seek funding to implement some of these changes. And keeping in mind that, it's not going to happen overnight. To reference Union Hill, the design and construction process is very long, especially with these projects that are funded federally through VTrans. You have to go through every step of the process, get every single box checked, even if it doesn't seem like, maybe reasonably it needs it. We still have to go through all those processes. So we would be able to just begin looking for funding.
So would we have to, because I'm just thinking budget-wise here too, you wouldn't really be able to move forward with design or anything until there was some kind of grant money?
Correct.
No, I'm just...
Well, you could do the design.
Well, we'd have to pay somebody to do it.
You'd have to pay for that. But usually,
That's what I'm getting at.
We want to use somebody else's money for it.
But what can happen is that as long as there's a scoping study that's been done and the municipal project manager is involved, and you go out and do that design, it is reimbursable as part of the 10% match if you get that grant.
John?
As Mr. McDermott said, and I've also been in town for, almost 40 years, and it always seems like this has been on the plate somewhere. And I just don't see a downside to the study. So I'm
Ready to make a motion?
I would make a motion. I haven't written anything up, but
I did.
oh, good.
I move that we accept and endorse the West Brattleboro Bicycle Pedestrian Scoping Study.
I could have written that.
I didn't even write it, I just underlined it.
I'll just echo many of the things that Mr. Bosworth and Mr. McDermott said. Almost all of my comments were included in what Michael summarized. I have real concerns about eliminating the turn lane, in Greenleaf Street. I know that it's a safety issue, but it's an integral part of the traffic flow there. And I have a real concern about eliminating the left turn lane into George Miller Drive, because I didn't see any alternative in the study for what's going to happen to that traffic. And unless they're going to get routed in front of Academy School, people come from the west to turn into that street, and so eliminating the turn into there didn't seem to me to make much sense. I also had some real concerns about how we go about narrowing the access at the 7-Eleven Plaza there at Greenleaf Street, Western Avenue intersection. That's privately held property, and they've got access permits onto Route 9, and we've had notoriously difficult time restricting access and having safer roads closer to the highway over near the commercial establishments that are closest to I-91. It's a notoriously dangerous area where cars are backing into Route 9 all the time, and new construction just went in there that it seems to me only makes the situation worse rather than better. And so I have some concerns about those logistical issues. And I actually agree with Mr. Montgomery as well. I really believe that the town as a whole should be looking at the entire corridor from Greenleaf Street to 91, with the goal of making that entire corridor way safer. And I've advocated for this in traffic safety, and I'll say it here in public. A continuous sidewalk with real granite curbing on the south side of the road running from Greenleaf Street to the highway would totally change the character of Route 9 through that area, and it really should be a priority. But it's like a mile and a half, 2 miles of sidewalk at $100 a foot is $1.5 million, $2 million project. But that would really change the character of that area, and this Academy area scoping study is part of that. But I'm in favor of something way broader, but also more focused, which is, granite curb sidewalk from Greenleaf Street to the highway on the south side of the road. That would really make a difference to the town and the safety of pedestrians all through that area.
I think we can push that with the bridge.
Right. And if we get the bridge replaced, it'd really be an excellent thing to try to get done. But for what this is, I had some concerns about it when I read it, and I expressed them pretty strongly in traffic safety. But at this point, I also will be in favor of this motion. Any other discussion? Hearing none. We have a motion to approve and endorse the Academy, what did you call it?
The West Brattleboro Bicycle Pedestrian Scoping Study.
Like he said, we have that motion. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thank you very much for your work.
Very nice
Thanks for your
job.
presentation.
Hannah,
Thanks everybody for participating as well. You. So the next item on the agenda is the Community Development Block Grant. So Isaac, remind me of your last name, Isaac? Wagner. So Isaac Wagner is here on behalf of the Wyndham and Windsor Land Trust. And Isaac, why don't you come up to the table and talk with us? And Ms. Ellison, thank you for being here and staying for
I thank you. I think our very brief presentation is a little less exciting than West Brattleboro traffic studies or even staffing reviews, but we'll do our best here to keep up. Tonight we're holding a public hearing. We're asking the town to support a community development block grant.
Right. So hold on a second. Before closing that agenda item, having taken that vote, I now close the public hearing on the RSG scoping study. And now I open the public hearing on the Wyndham Windsor Land Trust, or Housing Trust, grant application.
Can I give my disclaimer?
Please, again.
I'm sorry.
Again.
I have to keep saying it. I don't want to get in trouble. I'm a citizen appointee to the Community Development Block Grant Board where this application will go, and I've made an agreement with the state that I can take part at the town level, but I will not take part in this discussion on the state level.
So with those disclaimers and the public hearing being open,
There's some transparency right there.
That's not confusing.
So I'm just going to give a very brief overview for the public who might be interested. We did come to the last select board meeting, and I think everybody's up to speed on what our proposal is. We are proposing a construction project on 5 buildings in Brattleboro, all of which we already own. We've owned all of them for 20 years. It's a rehab project, and we're trying to do a pretty deep energy retrofit of these 5 buildings. And we have a lot of sources in the project, and the CDBG grant that we're making the request at the town for of $425,000 is a pretty small part of the overall funding package we're proposing for this project. It's all affordable housing, all low-income housing, 29 units, again, 5 buildings. And we would propose to begin the project, actually begin construction next fall. Probably wouldn't begin much before September of next year. So with that very brief snapshot, I'd like to just open it up if anybody has any questions or concerns about it. Fire away.
if we can just clarify, what you're looking for the town to do is to serve as the applicant for a community development block grant in the amount of $425,000. That will be part of a total fund of about $2 million that you're going to be spending to rehabilitate these 5 buildings in these 29 units?
Yeah, the construction costs actually be above that, 2.3, maybe higher. We're still in the very early stages of planning, so it's going to be at least 2.3 million construction costs. And yes, the grant is a pass-through. It's effectively a pass-through. The town would receive it and then pass it on to us. And we have a small amount of administrative dollars anticipated to reimburse the town for expenses associated with that pass-through.
And so the work, Kim, that we have to do in order to serve as the applicant and then to administer the funding, that means, I mean, what do we have to do as just a general matter?
Well, what we do on the state's system is we have to, Isaac will fill out the application. We review everything that has to do with the application. There is one section that I'm working on now where we have to do a report on what our unrestricted funds, our program funds, income funds have been used for over the last 3 years, how we've spent them over the last 3 years. You know, they want to see that that revolving loan fund money is continuing to be used for the purposes that it's supposed to. So we review the application, the environmental review, and then submit that to the state. When the grant agreement comes down, we review the grant agreement, with legal counsel, review a sub-grant agreement. And then once that is all done, in this particular case, there's probably be just one payout and it would be done. So a fairly short time span in terms of our involvement in it, maybe from now, 6 months now. I don't know, the meeting is in February, and once we get through the agreement and the sub-grant agreement, and they are allowed to requisition the funds. So then we review everything they do online and authorize submission of that paperwork.
And just to follow up, do we also have some role in reviewing how the money is spent or the requisition for the funds to ensure that it's for a compliant purpose? Or
Yes.
we do that and they certify, and the land trust, housing trust certifies that, and then there's yet another probably layer or two of checks on that at the
Right,
state
and
federal level?
then there are reports that are, annual reports that are filed, with the state where they have to show exactly where the money was spent and to whom, and that gets submitted online as well and approved.
And this grant provides for us getting paid for the time we spend for that administrative work?
The way
Reimbursed.
we're structuring it right now is we're reserving $6,000 of that grant, and what we usually do is you use that for out-of-pocket expenses. You'll see some increase in cost for your single audit, for instance. You can get that reimbursed. Other examples include legal expenses, because we will end up having to basically close a grant loan with the town, and so that legal expense will be reimbursed. What we try to talk to towns into doing is basically taking their grant administrator or their town manager's time and apply that as effectively a match, a community match. What we do at the Housing Trust is I try to make it as easy on Kim as possible. I do all the paperwork, and her role is to review and ensure that it's done correctly, but I will do all the program management and all the grant admin, and she will, in some cases, it's as simple as pressing the submit button. In other cases, she'll go into a deeper level of review on certain things.
And I just wanted to point out that you said this is a pass-through. It is pass-through as a loan. There will be a mortgage on the properties. We will have a recorded interest. Granted, it's a deferred loan for 30 years, but, we do have a security interest in the properties.
I think when, last time you were here, I think we had asked about the administrative costs, and I'm pretty sure we said we would like to be compensated for them.
We did.
I'm not sure if there's a matching requirement for the loan, that we might look at that differently, but I'm pretty sure I feel like we can't afford to donate those services.
Well, I've left that open. $6,000 is the typical amount, and Kate, I don't know if you can. I have to look into what the maximum amount of admin you can do, but $6,000 is typical, and you can apply that any way you want. I mean, if you come in under on your audit costs, or they're not that expensive, if legal fees are lower, you could use it for staff time as well. Patrick?
Yes. Just wanted to clarify something. I've asked Kim for her to keep track of her time that she spends on this grant and all the other grants. And in conversation with Isaac a couple of days ago, I guess into last week, when we talked about the $6,000 that's in the grant application that's eligible for general administration, that'll probably exceed the administrative cost. That'll actually well exceed the administrative cost for our participation in this grant. And so the town's good in this regard.
Thank you. All right, so that's an important thing. So there may be some fixed costs, but there are also maybe hourly costs, and we think the $6,000 will cover all of it.
Oh, more than cover it.
A good deal more than we'll need.
There really is.
Good, thank you. All right. Anybody else on the board have any questions?
Kim, you can keep the extra.
Good luck with that.
Okay, yeah.
That's a joke. That's a joke.
That's a joke.
Just a joke.
Wait a minute, it's on TV.
So I have a couple questions, unless anybody else on the board has got anything. So I wanted to first inquire about the application of the funds. As I was reading through the loan documents, it looks to me like some of the funding is for retirement, at least in the documents that we got, some of the funding goes to retire past debt. And that seems strange to me in the context of what we were being asked to endorse. And so I'm wondering if that is in fact what these funds would be used for.
No, these funds are used only for construction. This grant application asks for a whole bunch of 5 different categories of project costs that we're dealing with. We're finding other sources for. But we propose to use the CDBG, even though CDBG, you could legitimately use CDBG for relocation, for other things that I've noted here for acquisition. We don't like to do that. It's more complicated. It's just a lot easier to use it with a finite construction project and a finite construction period. So that's where we've applied all the CDBG money.
Excellent. Thank you.
With the exception of the 6,000 per ad.
Yeah, so, well, that's good, 6,000. And then I just wanted to point out something that's in the materials that were distributed to the select board, because we now have some very specific information in these grant materials about the assessed value of these properties, and then just some commentary from the lister. Is that what he's called now? The assessor. The assessor about what some of the issues are with respect to the housing trust. And so I'd like to just summarize those for anybody who's still listening. So there are 5 properties that would be reconstructed with these $2.3 million in funds, including the 450 amount that would come from the CDBG through the town of Brattleboro. And those 5 properties have a market assessment that is, in fact, in total, very similar to the state mandated assessment for those properties. And Kate's got it open to the page. I don't know if others have been able to locate that. It's actually this one here, Russell's memo. So one of the properties is assessed or is worth on the market about $60,000 more than what it pays taxes on. One of them is about $5,000 more that they're paying on taxes on now than what it would be worth. Another one is 60 under, 50 under, and then about 10 under. So in total, these properties pay taxes on a very significant amount of money, about $1.25 million. And the market assessment, if they weren't stabilized in this manner, would be about $1,350,000 or $400,000. So there's about $150,000 or $200,000 in property value that we don't raise taxes on by them being owned by the land trust and taxed in this manner. The concern that we often hear from private landowners, however, is that the land trust qualifies for this type of funding, which allows them to do very, very substantial rehabilitation on these properties through government funding. And that's what we're participating in here, as I understand it. So they're able to put like $2.3 million, $500,000 each, into each of these 5 properties, none of the buildings being worth any more than $380,000. And so a private landowner in town who owns a $380,000 building can't afford to make any improvements on their building except by raising private equity and then having to pay it back in one way or another, or raising rents. And so we get high quality housing stock through the Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust, but the land trust properties are then very differently situated from privately owned properties because they don't qualify for this type of funding to rehabilitate those properties. And that's just reality of life, and we're raising taxes, from these properties in a relatively proportionate manner with other properties in town. But we certainly acknowledge that that's something that's going on, and that is really sort of how the funding system through the government works. But it bears pointing out. Any other comments or questions or issues to be raised? Ms. Montgomery.
Isaac,
yes.
I think you started by describing these as deep energy retrofits. Do you have specific objectives for performance after the retrofits that you have established?
Yes. Will I be able to explain them all to you right now? I'm not sure. But what we do is we work with this organization. We do an energy audit basically on each of the buildings. We work with this organization called the Vermont Fuel Efficiency Partnership that does a very deep look at the measures and what measures pay off the most. Our whole idea on this project is to operate these projects for a very, very long time and to lower our operating costs on them. So I can give you some examples of some of the things we're doing. I mean, windows, for instance. There's some of the low-hanging fruit. Windows and insulation, new boilers. We're looking at solar systems on all 5 of the buildings. We're looking at pellet systems in at least 2 of the buildings, pellet heating systems. What did I miss? Low-flow fixtures in all the bathrooms and kitchens, LED lighting throughout all the buildings. Those are some examples of the type of measures we're talking about doing here.
So you don't have specific metrics like trying to reduce their energy used by 50%
what we're trying to get, yeah, well, I can,
per year or something?
I have those in the energy audit. I can't spit off exactly what they are right now for each of the buildings because, like I said, there's 5 different buildings. But, you know, one of the things with an oil-heated building, we're trying to get, you know, the building down to 200 gallons of oil per unit per year. That's just a general estimate. And with these apartments, we're getting pretty close to that for these. That's kind of hard to do in these old buildings. If you build a new structure, that's not that hard, but in these old buildings, you've got to be very careful to get down to that. So that's a rule of thumb, but we actually have broken it down to BTUs, so we have BTU objectives. I just don't have them off the top of my head. So.
For those of us who are energy geeks, it'd be very interesting to learn those figures.
Well, let me give you a call. I can share that information with you. Yeah.
Any further comments, questions? I guess maybe somebody would want to make a motion then?
I will. We adopt the resolution for grant application authority as presented to identify Kim Ellison as the point of contact and to identify Patrick Moreland, interim town manager, as the authorizing official.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thank you. I'll close the public hearing on the Wyndham-Windsor Community Development Block Grant application. And the next matter is the Brownsfield Assessment Grant application, and we recognize Rod Francis.
Hello.
Rod, you're here late. It's good to see you, buddy.
Always late. Sorry about that.
Okay. So you have in your packets a copy of the so-called GIST, which is the background application process for approving us in going forward with this grant application. For those, most of you were on the board. I think, in fact, you were all on the board the last time we did this, about a year ago, and we were unsuccessful in our initial effort. The general concept here is that Brattleboro has been a strong participant in the Wyndham Regional Commission's Brownfields program for many years, and in fact, we continue to have membership on the Wyndham Regional Commission Brownfield Committee. And the idea here is that both Wyndham Regional Commission and the town have concluded that there is enough brownfield activity in the region that Wyndham Regional Commission could focus on areas outside of Brattleboro, and Brattleboro has the staffing and the background to be able to run a Brattleboro-specific program. The other key benefit for us to go forward with this is that it would allow a small but important amount of money to be used, about $15,000, to be used for local area planning by defining a neighborhood where there are a large number of brownfield or potential brownfield sites and doing long-range planning in response to that. So it's difficult to assess at this point what the likelihood of success is, but we are of the view that we'll just keep on doing this until we get it.
That's what I was going to ask. You're just going to keep putting this in until...
Hopefully, with Jan's help, we'll probably change the date. So. That's about it.
Until we get the money.
Until we get it. Yeah, all right.
That's safe.
But we need Jan's help.
Jan catches my inability to change the date fairly frequently. So. Not going to dwell on that.
Way to go, Jen.
Are there any questions from anybody on the board? Any questions from anybody who's in attendance? Then I move to approve the planning department application for $400,000 Brownsfield assessment grant from the EPA to inventory, characterize, assess, and conduct planning community involvement related to Browns Fields in Brattleboro. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0.
And I understand I have some other things to do between now and Monday
I think
afternoon.
so. If you could attend to some people,
We should chat.
that'd be nice. Thank you. We made some time on the agenda for 20 after 5 on
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Monday, and if we get it before, we'll have a chance to look at it before.
Yep, that'll be great. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the next item on the agenda is the Sustainable Energy Funding Program. And I recognize, I think, everybody in the room. And I don't recognize anybody who would be here to speak to that one unless it's Ms. Montgomery. Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Ty Montgomery, I'm actually here to speak to this, assuming that it had been withdrawn from the agenda. First time I think I've ever attended a select board meeting with the intention to speak to an item that had been withdrawn. But be that as it may, boy, there's a lot to talk about here. There's a woman.
Well, wait a second. Wait a second.
Yeah.
Okay. What I'll say is this. Having called this item, I know that I think, and I know from the agenda setting meeting that at least one of the board member thinks that the proposal presents a huge range of issues. A suggestion that the town would be a partner in a wood pellet generating facility and in a project to generate heat for distribution throughout the town is a massive, massive undertaking.
Right.
That would seem, at least on its face, to be well outside the scope of the core municipal services that we provide.
So that proposal has been withdrawn.
Well, if it's been withdrawn, then we won't speak to it now, and if somebody wants to put it back in front of us, we'll do that at some point, and we'll just pass the item unless it's something we really need to talk about.
I would like to say a few words.
Okay.
The entity that submitted this letter requesting approval for a feasibility study is all they were asking for at this point. It's a group called the Sustainable Energy Funding Program, and they offer very low interest financing to municipal and nonprofit entities to do renewable energy and energy efficient work. And I've had numerous conversations with the director of this organization, a man named Larry Sprague. He's talked with Patrick. He's talked with Paul Cameron, a number of people in town. And they can fund, this organization, any project, any municipal project in town that involves energy efficiency or renewable energy. So I'm talking with him about the landfill solar project. I'm talking with him about the police and fire facility project and the potential to bring 1% to 2% interest capital to that project if it incorporates substantial energy efficiency. There are a number of different projects in town that I'm aware of that this organization could help to finance. So I just want to make the board aware of this organization and to let you all know that even though this was withdrawn this evening, proposals will be brought before you all in the future.
Why was this withdrawn?
Yeah, I have a couple questions.
Yeah, why don't we start with Patrick?
Tad, are you acting at this moment as a formal emissary from them?
No.
And letting us know that they're withdrawing?
Nobody's communicated to us.
We've received nothing, and I'm saying, you know, not showing up and not sending any sort of information is not putting your best foot forward.
I had assumed, in talking with this man, Larry Sprague, that he had informed you, Patrick, that he was withdrawing.
No.
I guess
I expected to see him here.
And we're all prepared.
Right.
I mean, we all spent the time to go through his materials.
I am sorry to hear that. If I'd known that, I would have let you all know.
Yep.
But I assumed that in his conversations with you, Patrick, that he had, because you had, well, anyway, I don't want to speak third hand about it, but I'm not acting in a formal way.
Okay,
No.
that was my only question.
But I'm happy to convey that, and I'm sorry that you all put time into a proposal that had been withdrawn.
It was interesting in a brave world kind of way.
In kind of a disturbing way, yeah. I read this thing over and over.
A number of questions. I didn't have any until all this came up. But first is my abiding discomfort in two board members making a decision that is a policy decision that I can't remember. I have to look and see if it's the charter or the town plan, but one of them specifically says the interest of that our job is protecting the interests of the community in terms of utilities. Electricity is specifically mentioned and some other things. If we're going to have a conversation about whether this is an appropriate thing for the town to be involved in, we need to have the conversation for the two of you to say, because you don't think you do, that that's how it should go, I think I'm not at all, that's not okay with me. We need to talk about whether this is something the town wants to be involved in. This, as I understand it, whether it's no longer, whether it's moot or not, is asking us to support, recognize the beneficial nature of the project, and this is a project that will increase economic activity in the forestry industry. It'll reduce costs for government and nonprofit institutions in the community, and it'll create a new manufacturing facility for wood products. So and it's a lot of positive outcomes here, and the only thing we're being asked to do is recognize that that's beneficial, and just to support them seeking funding for a feasibility study. Feasibility studies are to decide whether something is likely or beneficial. It doesn't commit us to anything. If the town decides at some point we don't want to be a partner in any aspect of it, we get to make that decision. If we decide that it's not, and there's a lot of things that have to be done, like tearing up streets and laying pipe and all sorts of things that have to be worked out. If that's not likely or not possible, the feasibility study is going to show that. And for us to just say, okay, well, never mind, because we don't think this is something the town should be involved in, or that you too don't think something the town should be involved in without us having a chance to talk about it, it's not okay.
Hold on, John.
Okay.
So let's be clear.
Yes, please.
We were informed last Wednesday at agenda setting meeting, under the procedures that have been adopted by the Select Board, that this group, Sustainable Energy Funding Program, wanted to come in front of the Select Board and seek support for this proposal that they were making. And part of what happens in agenda setting is that we discuss various matters that are going to come up in front of the board, including the dynamics of those projects and what they might entail for the town as a whole. And then we make a decision whether they're going to be on the agenda or not. And during the agenda setting meeting, I think it was fair to say that both the chair and the vice chair and the interim town manager recognized that this was probably a huge undertaking, and it was questionable whether it was really within the scope of the matters that we'd be able to take on as a municipality. But we decided to put it on the agenda for it to be discussed here and have a full public vetting of the project. And then had they been here and had there been an issue to be voted on, we would have voted on it. But they didn't show. So I don't really understand why they didn't show, because as a result of our putting it on the agenda, we probably collectively spent 5 or 6 hours reviewing this huge proposal without anything coming out of it.
Gotcha.
John?
Yeah, well, you basically said what I was going to say. And David, I understand. And I understand your passion for this. But now that it's been withdrawn.
We don't know.
Well,
we don't even know that.
Well, we do know it's withdrawn because nobody's here. So, I mean, nobody's here to argue this one way or the other. And I did. I put some time into this. And, you know, whether I was going to vote yay or nay, it doesn't matter, because now it's really a moot point.
It's a moot point.
It really is. And it's sad, but because it did make it on the agenda, I think it gave us all the opportunity to talk about it and vet our opinions one way or the other.
In fact, when an item 3.5 years ago didn't make its way on the agenda, I insisted on the procedures being changed and made a proposal to change the rules and procedures so that when something did not make its way onto the agenda, notice was given to all select board members so they could then ask for the matter to be raised about whether it should be on the agenda. And if the two of us had decided not to put it on the agenda, that's exactly what would have happened.
Okay, so I, as often is the case, I overreacted.
Thanks for keeping us honest.
Love that. I love honesty.
We all do.
I feel bad for Tad.
It's not on your time. Are we ready for the calendar?
We are ready for the calendar.
I'm ready
Please,
to read the
Ms. Donald.
calendar.
Good. See you, Ted. Thanks for
Good
coming.
night, Ted.
Good night, Ted.
On Wednesday, November 19th, 7 a.m., Coffee with a Cop will occur at McDonald's Restaurant on Putney Road. 5 p.m. in the Hannah Cosman Meeting Room, Pay-As-You-Throw Committee will meet. At 6 p.m., the Planning Commission special meeting will happen in the Select Board Meeting Room. On Monday, November 24th at 5:30, the Citizens Police Communication Committee meeting will occur in the Brooks Memorial Library Community Room. Tuesday, November 25th, 8:30 a.m., the Traffic Safety Committee will meet in the Select Board Meeting Room. 5:15 p.m., the Conservation Commission will meet in the Hannah Cosman Room. 5:30 p.m., the Human Services Review Committee will meet at 528 Goodenough Road. On Thursday, November 27th, 8:30 a.m., the town offices will be closed in observation of the Thanksgiving holiday. On Friday, November 28th at 8:30 a.m., town offices closed. The library will be open regular hours. On Monday, December 1st, 5 p.m., the Energy Committee will meet in the Hannah Cosman Room. At 6 p.m., the Planning Commission meeting will meet in the Select Board Meeting Room. On Tuesday, December 2nd, 5:30 p.m., the Human Services Review Committee will meet at 528 Goodenough Road. At 6:15 p.m., we'll be back. The Select Board will meet in the Select Board Meeting Room. And that is the end of the calendar.
Very nicely
All right.
done.
Thank you, John Allen.
So I move to enter executive session to discuss appointment, employment, or evaluation of public officer or employee with a finding that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or person involved at a substantial disadvantage. Before we vote on that motion, I'm going to note that we're going to go into executive session. We'll rise from executive session without making any decisions, and we'll then adjourn the meeting at that time. I want to thank everybody who participated in today's meeting. I want to thank members of the press. I want to thank ASL interpreters, everybody who's been watching us on BCTV, and say good night.
Good night.
I want to thank
Everybody
Jay.
in favor of that motion to go into executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining, that carries 5-0.